Welcome back, everyone, to the fourth episode of the Triple Play Podcast. I'm Kevin Peters with my co-host Adam Kelly, and we are super excited today to welcome in another guest, good friend of mine, and Emmy Award-winning journalist, Dan Cohen. Dan, thank you for being on the show with us.
I'm glad we could finally make this happen. I know we've been working on getting together for this pod, and now we're here, and it's a joyous occasion. Huzzah to all! It's going to be a good time.
Absolutely, super excited. So, Dan, you went to Syracuse University to get your degree, correct? So,
yes.
What made you get into journalism? What was the motivating factor to start being a journalist?
It's a twofold story. It's my inability to play a single sport in high school, being the kid who got his glasses knocked off in gym class during dodgeball. I hated gym, but I loved watching sports with my dad. You know, being a lifetime Philadelphia sports fan back home in southern New Jersey where I grew up. So I wanted to find an avenue where I could drive that passion somewhere productively. And I also was a performing arts kid in high school. I did all the plays, I did all the musicals. So what better way to join those two things together than being a sports reporter and being a sports anchor and telling stories that way. So that was kind of the driving factor, picking a career. I had a lot of people ask me like, "Oh, you're doing all the shows and you're pretty good. Why aren't you pursuing an acting career?" Because I told them I didn't want to audition for the rest of my life. But when you're auditioning for jobs for a sports anchor position, that's kind of the same thing. So I guess I shot myself in the foot that way. But notwithstanding, I got this job right out of school after I got my journalism degree at Syracuse, and it's been a heck of a time. Covering a World Series and covering a U.S. Open of golf and a Stanley Cup final. In 4 years on the job, it's been a pretty good time.
Yeah, you've basically hit everything that I want to do as a sports fan, of like going to events and like just being there and experiencing things. So I know were you at Game 7 of the Cubs World Series?
I was there. I was in Cleveland. We were stuck in the rain delay, and we had a heck of a night that night. We cut into national programming on our station and did a live post-game show. We had a team of reporters in Cleveland, me and my sports director. We had a team of reporters at Wrigley capturing the mood there. We had folks in downtown Rockford celebrating, and we had our crew in the studio. It was a post-game show literally produced on the fly as soon as we knew the game was over, because we were not going to do a post-game show if the Indians won that game. But as soon as the Cubs made the final out, we were in position ready to go, and we kind of just shot from the hip, and it was a wild experience doing that outside the stadium in Cleveland, but it was a great time.
Yeah, it must have been awesome.
It was one of the best nights of my professional career, not even close.
Sweet. So I think it popped up on my time hop about a year ago at this point was when you won your Emmy, right?
Yes.
So what did you win the Emmy for? Like, what was the whole shebang like for that?
So the category that we won in was Best Morning Newscast, and the submission that we had was a 2-hour morning show that basically included live reporting, feature reporting, breaking news, and I was a part of the feature reporting element of that show. Mm-hmm. And the way that the Midwest chapter of the Emmys works is that they basically award Emmys in 2 separate categories. The Chicago stations compete amongst themselves because it's kind of unfair for a smaller Midwestern market to compete against Chicago. So you have all the Chicago stations competing against each other. And then you have markets sized 51 and above competing against each other. So it's it's more of a level playing field that way. So we won for Best Morning Newscast in the smaller market category. And I was a part of that. And the cool thing about the Emmys is everyone whose name is on the submission that wins can, have get a trophy and get the nameplate on it. And that was a really special moment to be a part of an award-winning newscast like that. And that's one of 4 Emmys that we've won in different categories each of the last 4 years. It's been a great run of success at our station, and it's a testament to our teamwork because in a market size number 136, you don't think you're going to be pumping out award-winning content all the time, but we do that every year, and it's a great experience for a first job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations on that. Are you going to win another one this year?
We already did. We won
Here we go.
special. We won one for our coverage of the opioid epidemic here in the Rockford community. That was another, enterprise feature reporting element. I was not on that submission, but I was thrilled for my coworkers that were, covering, what the opioid epidemic has done to our community, steps moving forward to prevent abuse and more fatalities from the opioid epidemic, and we've done some really incredible storytelling there, and we're going to continue that into next year. But yes, we just won that a few weeks ago at the Emmy ceremony in Chicago.
Excellent. Well, congratulations to the WREX team.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So we'll hop into now the sports part of the podcast. I guess the first thing we'll start with, it's a week past now, but the Kareem Hunt incident, him being released from the Chiefs. Adam, you're a big Chiefs guy, so I guess we'll get your initial take on when that happened and then the subsequent release of Kareem Hunt and kind of your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, it was just sort of a terrible situation all around. I remember hearing about the incident back in February when it was first reported, but the headline was just basically that there were no arrests and no charges being pended, and so everyone just kind of forgot about it. And then for this to pop up here, so far into the season, you're coming in on the playoffs. So not a great situation, obviously, for the Chiefs. Terrible situation for everybody involved. It's not great. And,
Less than ideal.
as a Chiefs fan, you sort of get used to new and exciting ways that they can disappoint their fan base every season, and so I guess this is just the latest iteration of that. But I do think that they did the right thing. They handled the situation well, immediately cutting him. There were some questions about the legitimacy of the charges, but I think the video is pretty. Yeah, you can see for yourself what happened, and I think they did the right thing. A lot of people comparing this to the Ray Rice situation. I think that's a little bit unfair. I don't think this is quite on that level, but obviously, the NFL, they don't exactly have a great reputation for handling domestic issues very well. So I think they're definitely trying to crack down on that, and I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. And do you think, I saw this question posed on Twitter, do you think Kareem would ever deserve a second chance in the NFL? And if so, when would he, you think, be able, people would be able to accept him back into the NFL? What would he have to do?
I mean, I'm a kind of guy who believes that everybody deserves a second chance. But they have to own up to their mistakes.
Right.
And I think that was the biggest issue in this situation. It was not necessarily the incident itself, even though that was obviously very bad, very unfortunate. From what I've heard from members of the organization and from the local Kansas City reporters is that the Chiefs cut him because he lied about it.
Right.
They asked him about the incident in February, and the story that he told them was not the truth. And so that was sort of the deal breaker there. And so, yeah, if he ever wants to get back in the NFL, which I think eventually he will, I don't know when exactly that will be. It might be as early as next season, maybe, midway into next season, a couple years from now. I'm not sure. But I do think he will get back in. But he needs to own up to his mistakes. He needs to, pay his fine, serve his suspension, whatever else he needs to do, and show that, he has changed and become a better person. Because you just can't have the risk of something like that happening again and ruining an opportunity like he's had.
Right. Dan, do you have any thoughts on the Kareem Hunt situation?
I mean, I think we pretty much have hit on everything, and what's really been driven home over the last couple of days is the NFL just needs to get out of its own way when it comes to domestic violence investigations and handling suspensions, because they just can't seem to figure it out. And this is an epidemic in the NFL, and there has been, some evidence and some reporting on what head trauma and CTE can do to a player's emotional state and mental state when it comes to domestic violence. I am not insinuating at all that this was the case with Kareem Hunt. We don't know what his mental status is from a health standpoint there, but this is an epidemic across the league. Greg Hardy, Ray Rice, Kareem Hunt, Adrian Peterson, when it comes to child abuse, and Reuben Foster. This is a guy who was arrested and cut by the 49ers, and then Washington decided to put in a waiver claim on him. And, I absolutely think that someone will take a chance on Kareem Hunt one of these days when he atones for his mistakes and is put through counseling and all of that. The league just needs to get out of its own way, and Roger Goodell has proven time and time again that he does not have a grasp on how to handle domestic violence in his league, because it continues to be a problem regardless of team, regardless of player status. I mean, Kareem Hunt was a top 5 running back each of the last 2 years and was on a Super Bowl contending team who decided to cut him immediately, no questions asked. And that will hurt their Super Bowl chances down the road, but, they put their values and morals above, their chances of winning a Lombardi this year. And again, Roger Goodell needs to get out of his own way when it comes to this stuff, because he's incompetent and his league is incompetent with handling these types of issues. It continues to come up year after year.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think the Chiefs did exactly what they needed to do. Getting rid of Kareem immediately was the only decision I think they had. Any kind of delay of trying to do an internal investigation kind of thing, I think would have just backfired on them significantly. So getting rid of Kareem was definitely the best decision. And I think if he does go through counseling and he does prove to the NFL and prove to teams that he has changed, I also think he deserves a second chance. But I don't think that second chance comes until at least the 2020 season. But I'm with Adam that I do think players deserve a second chance. After the second chance, I'm not so sure if a third chance will be warranted, but definitely I don't think this should be the end of his career, but I think he has to work to earn the next part of his career. So,
in this day and age, if you're talented enough, you can basically get away with anything.
That's true.
I did want to hit on, Dan, to your point. I do think that is sort of an under talked about aspect of the story is, look at all of the guys who are being caught with this stuff. It's the running backs, it's the linebackers, it's the linemen, it's the guys that get hit in the head over and over and over again more than any other position. And I do think that it may be a case of correlation rather than causation, but I don't think so. You can only take so many blows to the head before your decision making starts to crumble and your aggression levels start to rise. So I don't know what the NFL can do exactly to address that sort of thing.
And I want to hit on the fact that, this is an inherently violent sport. There's only so much you can do to prevent head trauma and injuries in a sport that is inherently violent. And yes, the players know exactly what they're getting themselves into. But the NFL needs to create a structure and a system where they can help these players that are getting their bells rung every single week. And we can get into the pension fund and the class action lawsuits that have come up about the retired players that are dealing with head trauma after their careers are over. But you talked about running backs and linebackers and linemen. I don't know what the official numbers are, but we've seen a lot of players killing themselves after their playing careers are over the last few years. And the first name that comes to mind is Junior Seau. How many hits to the head did he take as one of the best linebackers in the history of the league? He took a lot of blows to the head, and he shot himself in the chest to donate his brain to science to have it looked at to determine, what was the condition of his brain after his career was over after taking so many shots to the head. I think this is a conversation that needs to continue, and I know the league doesn't want to hear it, and they're trying to drown it out. But, this isn't going away. This problem is not going away when it comes to head trauma and CTE in the NFL, and it's coming up across other sports too. The NHL is dealing with a class action lawsuit regarding CTE and blows to the head because there are a lot of retired players who are dealing with the same kinds of problems, and there have been cases of player suicide after their careers are over in the NHL too. This isn't going away anytime soon.
Yeah. It's such a tricky thing to even try and find a solution to, because I mean, you can protect the outside of your head as much as you want, and I mean, helmets nowadays, you could run square into a brick wall and you wouldn't feel it like on the outside of your head. But with the whiplash effect, that's what's causing most of the problems with brain injuries, is because like externally your head's not going to get hit, but it's the whip back, and you can't protect literally the inside of your skull. So it's when your brain is bouncing and hitting your skull which is causing most of these problems. So it's an internal thing, and so even finding a solution, a way to minimize the actual the brain damage and the actual trauma is so difficult, because there's not a whole lot further we can go as far as actual protection of the brain, unless we can figure out a way to insulate the brain and keep it from ever moving. And I think that would cause more problems than it would solve.
Well, this podcast is certainly taking a morose turn for the worse.
Yeah, usually we joke. Usually I'm laughing. But
this is a very serious conversation. Can we lighten the mood just a little bit over here?
Yeah, so we'll move on. So that was Kareem Hunt and concussion protocol. Real quick, I want to touch on, so we were planning on having Dan last week, but the Packers fired Mike McCarthy, so Dan got caught up covering all that. So real quick, Dan, who do you think is going to take over as the new head coach for the Packers?
I think Josh McDaniels is a no-brainer call, and they obviously need to get an ironclad commitment from him, because we saw what he did to the Indianapolis Colts this past offseason. Mm-hmm. I think McDaniels would be the perfect offensive fit for them. I think he would run a system that really caters to Aaron Rodgers' strengths. You don't know how much more Rodgers has left in the tank, 5, 6, 7 years down the road. He isn't getting any younger, and you signed him to a massive contract extension, and I think Josh McDaniels is an ideal fit. I've seen Lincoln Riley's name get floated around. I don't know if he wants to make the jump to the NFL, but I think an offensive-minded coach like McDaniels, who has the championship pedigree of working with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady for as long as he has. I know his previous head coaching stop was not as successful, but I think he would have the tools to succeed in Green Bay, and I think that would be a fresh start for a franchise that only has one Super Bowl attached to its name, with one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the league there. So I think having McDaniels coming in and installing a new system that Rodgers would be on board with, I think that's your ideal choice. But again, he flaked out on the Colts, and they have Andrew Luck at quarterback. So who knows what's going through his head this offseason when he starts getting those phone calls.
Do you think there is maybe going to be a push towards bringing in these younger, like highly offensive-minded coaches because of like the success we see from Sean McVay over in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I think so. I think the league is moving. I mean, look at the success that McVay has had over the last 2 years with that team. He's a young, bright guy. He brings in, this shoot 'em up, shoot 'em out style offense where everybody's running up and down the field, and that's where the league is going. It's going towards this high octane, shotgun pass first style offense. So I think you're going to see a lot of younger guys get the phone call from general managers around the league who are trying to keep up with this. I think the Chiefs-Rams game on Monday night, and I'm gleaning this from an article I read on The Athletic shortly after the Monday Night Football game, that's a glimpse at what the league is going to look like in a couple of years. The NFL is going to start looking a lot more like college football. These 50-50 games, these games in the 40s.
Looking a lot more like Big 12 football.
Exactly. You're going to see these spread-style offenses creep more into the league and a de-emphasis on the running game. So I think you are going to see these Sean McVay, Lincoln Riley type coaches start to make the jump to the NFL, because these college principles are creeping their way into the bloodstream of the NFL, and I think that's where it's going to be in a couple of years. So absolutely, I think coaches that operate like a Sean McVay and a Matt Nagy in Chicago, I think that's what you're going to see more often as we go forward here.
I think you're right. Definitely, the NFL is trending away from the pro style into the college spread. So definitely, the more offensive-minded your coach, I think the better you're suited for the future. But talking about Rams and these high octane offenses, who do we have now that we're almost done with the NFL season? Who are your guys' Super Bowl picks? Who do you think is going to be in the Super Bowl, and who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl?
I defer to your co-host, Kevin.
Adam, go ahead.
Every fiber of my body wants to put the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I would love nothing more than to see that, but there's that nagging portion in the back of my brain that's not letting me do it, that says that somehow, some way, they're going to find a way to blow it in the playoffs like they always do. And so, the tried and true, always evergreen pick out of the AFC is, of course, the Patriots. And I hate to say it, but I think the Patriots are going back. I don't think they're going to win, though. And I've been, juggling back and forth between the Rams and the Saints. I thought most of the season the Saints looked like the better team until Drew Brees got shut down just last week by the Cowboys. So I think, asking me today, I'd go Pats and Rams, with Rams getting the victory.
Okay, is that the 2001 rematch?
That's the first Adam Vinatieri field goal rematch. Yes.
Yep.
That was the greatest show on turf back in the day, right?
Yes, Marshall Faulk and Kurt Warner, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So Rams, Pats out of Adam. Dan, what do you got for me?
I mean, I thought the Saints were a lock too, and then they went into Dallas and couldn't figure anything out, and I think that just speaks to their inability to win on the road. I mean, you go into the Superdome and face them, you're not winning, but at this rate, they're not going to be the number one seed in the NFC, and if the NFC Championship game is being played in Los Angeles, I got to go with the Rams. I think this weekend will be a good litmus test for the Chicago Bears to see how they stack up against a team like the Rams, but I do think the Rams are going to win that game, and I think that's going to be an important litmus test for a young Bears team that's up and coming and making waves this year in Matt Nagy's first season. But out of the NFC, I do like the Rams. I don't think it's out of the question to talk about an all-Los Angeles Super Bowl. It's obviously going to depend on the Chargers' health moving forward. They have had some injury problems the last few weeks, but at the pace that Phillip Rivers is going, he looks outstanding, and their defense has some great athletes. It would not surprise me to see a Chargers-Rams Super Bowl, but you can't discount the Chiefs. They will figure it out without Kareem Hunt, I think. You can't discount the Patriots. And I think the Texans are right there, too. They're the hottest team in the league. They've won 9 in a row. Nobody can stop them. I think the AFC is wide open, and whoever emerges out of that pack will be facing the Rams in the Super Bowl. But right now, if I really had to pick, I just like the sound of a Chargers-Rams Super Bowl. I'm going to go with that until further notice.
Fair enough.
Interesting.
The Rams are my choice. The Rams have been my choice to win the Super Bowl since the season began. I think you can actually go back on Twitter and check that. So there is proof that I've been riding the Rams to win the Super Bowl this whole season. So that's who I think is going to win the Super Bowl. And Dan, like you said, there are 4 teams in the AFC that any one of them, I wouldn't be surprised if they made it, being the 4 that you mentioned, the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Pats, and the Texans. I think the Texans are going to run out of steam eventually. I think they'll just gas themselves and not be able to finish it out. Obviously, Tom Brady is Tom Brady, and leading the Pats to the Super Bowl is just what he does. So picking one of those 3, I think I'm gonna eliminate the Texans, but I think they're a definite dark horse to upset some people. I think without knowing what Melvin Gordon's status is in Los Angeles, I think I'll have to go with the Pats for now. So Pats Rams, with the Rams winning the whole kit and caboodle.
I have to say, though, I really don't care how this postseason goes because my Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl in February, so this season's just kind of been me coasting at this point, enjoying my brace period of my team being the champ for a year. They will not be defending their title in the playoffs, but that's okay.
The Eagles just decided to coast this year, too.
Yeah, the hangover is definitely real, and they've had some injury problems and lost a couple of really important pieces in free agency, but I think they'll figure it out, and you had Carson Wentz coming back from a ACL tear, so I'm going to give them a pass this year, and then next year I'll probably start booing them again.
Fair enough. And sticking with the championships, we have the college football playoff is all set with the 4 teams, with Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma. So we get Alabama, Oklahoma, and Clemson, Notre Dame to start us off. Who do you guys got for winners in the championship game? Who's going to be facing off against who? We started with Adam, so we can start with Dan this time.
I mean, is this really a conversation? It's going to be Alabama,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
yeah.
I don't think this is even worth our time. If Tua
So basically,
Tagovailoa
who is Alabama
healthy,
going to beat?
I mean, I think you got to put your money on Clemson. They've been outstanding all year, and I know Notre Dame is undefeated, but I don't think they have the horses to keep up with Clemson. But this really isn't a conversation. If Tua's ankle is in fine shape, this is Alabama's to lose. So that's my 2 cents on the matter. It's Alabama and everybody else in college football at this point.
Yep. Adam?
I would have agreed with you, I think, until the SEC championship game where they looked very, very shaky against Georgia. Obviously, Georgia, incredibly talented defense, probably, obviously a better defense than Oklahoma, probably better than Clemson and Notre Dame as well. So, the question to whether any of those 3 teams can slow down Bama's offense, probably not. But I don't know. I kind of like Oklahoma and Kyler Murray going in there, putting up a lot of points. It's tough, but no, I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna go with the upset. I think Bama loses to Oklahoma,
And then
I think Clemson takes down Notre Dame, and Oklahoma, because they can win big games, but never the biggest game, will choke in the finals, and I think Clemson takes it all.
That's fair. That is an interesting point. I think that, I mean, we saw Georgia. I mean, they put up numbers on Alabama in the first half, right? Did they have 28 at halftime? 21 or 28 at halftime. And Georgia's offense does not compare to Oklahoma's. No one's offense compares to Oklahoma's. So I think it will be a really fun matchup seeing Oklahoma's offense go up against Alabama's defense. The question will be, can Oklahoma stop Alabama enough, basically like twice? I think if Oklahoma can stop Alabama's offense twice, I think Oklahoma's offense can maintain pace. That it will be very close. I think Alabama...
That's asking a lot, though, right?
Yeah. It's obviously Alabama is the best overall team in college football right now, and it's not fair. It's not close, just with how good they are. Like, when your Heisman contender goes down and then your backup just comes in and just slings the ball around again, I mean, that team is just so good top to bottom. Like, there's just not a hole in it. But I think we'll see them tested against that offense that OU puts out. So I think that will be a better game than whatever championship game we end up with. But I do think it'll be Alabama taking the whole thing over Clemson. So that's college football. We are going to briefly talk about college basketball and TCU basketball because it's our podcast and we can. So the Frogs put the hurt on the USC Trojans last night, and it was really fun to watch. Jalen Fisher is really good at basketball, and putting up 96 is always really fun. So, Adam, you have any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, they look like the team that I expected them to be coming into the season. That loss to Lipscomb really sort of shook my confidence in that team, but I'm back on the bandwagon now.
Fair enough. I mean, Lipscomb's a decent team. I mean, they're a tournament team with a bunch of seniors, so early in the season and without Fish really healthy, I mean, that's a tough game to win, even when you are at home. So I gave the Frogs a pass on that one. I was happy that they were able to come from behind against SMU and turn that into a win on the road, and then win on the road again at the Staples Center. So it was good all around. Dan, how's college basketball up in Illinois? How's that going? How the Huskies? Are they the best team up there?
No, well, I mean, you've got, some talented Big Ten schools out here. Northwestern has been on the come up of late. Loyola Chicago going to the Final Four last year. It's Wisconsin has a big game against Marquette on Saturday. They've looked very good. Ethan Happ is a beast in the post. From my standpoint as a Syracuse fan, I am always keeping an active eye on my Orange. Ranked to start the season, had a really bad, week at Madison Square Garden during one of the early season tournaments, but they have some shooting issues that they need to work out. I am happy to see that Jamie Dixon landed on his feet at TCU. He was an absolute bear to play against when Syracuse faced Pittsburgh every year in Big East and ACC play. And I think Jamie's one of the best coaches in college basketball. And I never liked him at Pitt, but I'm happy to see him doing well at TCU because I think he's an exceptional defensive coach.
Absolutely, we love having him here. I mean, his first season with the Frogs, he turned them from like a 6-win team into NIT champions. So you definitely can't be mad with that glow up.
Yeah, seriously, yeah. Jamie's great, and I'm glad that he's doing well at TCU, and I like parodying college basketball. It gets old after a while when you see the same programs dominate. I like seeing programs going through the rebuild process and kind of revive themselves. But I have to tell you, watching Gonzaga play this year is a lot of fun. Rui Hachimura is an exceptional talent, and I hope he goes in the lottery. And, Gonzaga's been the bridesmaid for so long. They have a very good chance of being the bride at the end of the season if they keep this up.
Yeah. The Zags are a load, and that is a veteran team that they're putting out there, too. So, I mean, they did work on Duke, beating them earlier this year. I will just say this. We're about to move on, but I'm not a fan of Zion Williamson. I'm just not a fan. I don't know what it is.
You're hating Kevin. My goodness.
I don't like him. I get that he's exceptionally talented, but there's just something about him. I'm just like, I could do without him.
We got a hater on our hands over here.
A little bit, and it might also partially be because he's at Duke.
Yeah, that doesn't.
Easy to hate on Duke.
That doesn't help. The thing I tell people about Duke is that I hate Duke. I just hate the aura of Duke, but God, I respect the hell out of Coach Krzyzewski. I mean, he's an Iron Man when it comes to that sport. So I've got respect for Coach K, but I just hate. I mean, it's like the Yankees and Notre Dame football. You can't stand them.
Yeah, basically.
So
all right, so that was a lot of sports. We're gonna move on. So the Avengers final movie the trailer dropped with its name. So Avengers Endgame. Did both of you see that trailer? I saw the trailer.
I did.
I did. So what do you guys think? Are you up to date on the MCU, Dan?
Not completely. That's one of the movie genres that I am not completely on board with. I have seen the Iron Man movies, and they were phenomenal. I do need to work on that, though. It might be one of those things where I wait for Endgame to come out on Blu-ray and or DVD, and I just go on a binge mode and watch them all in a row, because I'm kind of a sporadic Marvel Universe observer and enjoyer. I loved Black Panther, so I kind of need to get up to speed on that. But I did see the Endgame trailer, and I think it's going to do a number at the box office when it comes out.
Yeah, I think they're going to knock it out of the park with this final movie. It was an excellent, I think, trailer, because it got you really hyped for it, but it didn't reveal, I don't think, anything about what the main plot of the storyline is going to be. I mean, obviously the main plot is they beat Thanos, right? But I don't think it really exposed how it's going to happen. So I think they did a good job of just building the hype towards the movie. I love that Paul Rudd is actually going to be in this. So I'm really looking forward to him reprising Ant-Man and Avengers, because Paul Rudd is a national treasure who should be protected at all cost.
What a take on Paul Rudd.
Nobody's as passionate about Paul Rudd as Kevin.
Can you disagree? I mean, besides Nick Cage, is there a bigger national treasure in American cinema than Paul Rudd?
Oh my God! Here we go.
Paul Rudd's a Kansas City boy, so
don't be haters. Adam, what are your thoughts on Endgame?
The title is interesting. I had just assumed that it was going to be Infinity War Part 2. But Endgame obviously has very different connotations. I think that's sort of them saying once and for all that, hey, that first wave of Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man, the Hulk, and Thor, all those guys, they're done. And I think that's an interesting move if that turns out to be the case, but it's a move that I like having closure with stories and not just cranking things out for money, and I'm excited with the supporting cast that's also going to be in that movie. My brother and I were joking the other day that it looks like the team that's going to have to save the universe is going to be Ant-Man, Hawkeye, Rocket Raccoon, Korg, and M'Baku. who, I don't know about you, I'm ready to declare those 5 the new Avengers. Just an all-star squad.
I think so. Did you say, was the final one you said M'Baku? Is that what you said?
Yeah. He's still alive.
I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Yeah, he is still alive. And I'm on board. I mean, M'Baku's basically the Hulk, right? And Rocket Raccoon is a a rodent version of Iron Man. So all the pieces are there for the new Avengers. So it'll be really fun. I am excited for it. When Infinity War came out, it immediately jumped to the top of my list for my all-time favorite movie, which people thought I was crazy for, but I absolutely loved Infinity War. So I'm excited to see the ending of the whole thing. I'm excited to see everything come together. It'll be fun.
The conversation about best movie of all time, we can have it another time. Infinity War is obviously fantastic, but I don't know. I will fight you, Kevin. I will fight you. I will fight you on this. Go
shave your beard and we can fight.
No, the beard is staying. We are now into December, so that's just the way it's going to go. All right?
Fair enough. Moving on from the Avengers and the cinematic masterpieces that they are, we're going to go back in time a little bit because we haven't had a Game of Thrones new season in a very long time, and it makes me sad. But we are going to talk a little bit about Game of Thrones because it is set to come back. Is it May or June?
April, even sooner. So it is set to come back. It's the final season. It's only going to be like 6 episodes, right? But they're all like super long, if I recall correctly. It's basically going to be a season of 6 movies. Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. So, just I guess a look back at Game of Thrones. What are your guys', I guess, your favorite moments from Game of Thrones? Your favorite moments, who are your favorite characters, those kind of things. Dan, talking Game of Thrones was your idea, so
yeah.
Let's start with you.
I was a late bloomer to Game of Thrones. I jumped in after the 3rd season. I jumped in between the 3rd and the 4th season, not knowing that Eddard Stark is going to get beheaded at the end of season 1, and then the Red Wedding is going to happen at the end of season 3. Yeah, if you haven't seen Game of Thrones and you heard the preamble to our Game of Thrones discussion, and you're going to yell at us for spoiler alerts, like, take a seat. That's your problem, okay?
That's a good point. All right.
That's your problem. And I have been a consistent viewer from seasons 4 through 7. I mean, just some of the big-time set pieces with the battle scenes and the White Walkers and the Battle of the Bastards at the end of, I believe that was season 6, and just some of these massive, massive battle scenes. They're basically making movies for television. I mean, the budget that they have from HBO is incredible. And, the character development has been wonderful. I do have some issues with their depiction of rape and their treatment of women. That's another conversation for another time because it is a sticking point for me, the way that they depict abuse and domestic abuse in that time. And I know it's a period piece. I know that's the case.
Well, I think it's controversial because some of the stuff is not even in the source material, so it's like something that the directors consciously made decisions to add. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss are not batting 1,000 when it comes to Game of Thrones, but even the best show of all time is not perfect. But just the reveal of Jon Snow's parentage has been such a debated topic amongst book fans and show fans forever, and they finally revealed it at the end of season 7. And I think that's going to have major consequences for the final season. How is this going to unfold? How is this going to, present itself when they're determining the rightful ownership of the Iron Throne in the final season? Is it even going to matter with the White Walkers now coming through the hole in the wall thanks to the zombie dragons? So these are a lot of really interesting questions that are going to be solved in the final season, and I'm very excited to see how they all play out.
Yeah. So if you had to pick a favorite character in the show, there's a lot of good ones. So who's your favorite character?
I mean, R.I.P. Hodor, right? Is it too soon to celebrate Hodor? Hard tap, pour one out for Hodor. But I don't know. I mean, there's so many great moments and characters in this show. I think Jon Snow, for me, is obviously the most complex and interesting just because of who he is in his background and the journey that he's been through. I think he, for me, is the most interesting. I don't know if he's my favorite, but he certainly has the most compelling arc of all of them. I think Arya Stark is probably my favorite. I mean, she has become a face-ripping assassin. And I was concerned at her relationship with Sansa in Season 7. It seemed like there were some legitimate concerns there, but they turned around and came together and terminated Lord Baelish at the end of Season 7. So that was a nice moment, and I think Arya, for me, is probably my favorite now that I think about it.
That's fair. For me, I definitely agree that I've maintained this since the end of Season 6, that the Battle of the Bastards, that final fight scene, is the greatest scene in TV history. Just the way it was directed, when you look at the behind the scenes stuff of how they did it, it's just gorgeous, and it's incredible the way they were to pull it all together. It's actually when Jon Snow is standing by himself and the horses are riding down on him, that's actually the wallpaper on my laptop, is that screenshot of
Love it.
Jon Snow standing there, because it was so beautifully done, and just the emotions going through you, and you're like, what is happening, who's about to die? Because that's, I think, one of the great things about Game of Thrones is that your favorite character can die at a moment's notice. And so,
yep.
I mean, with Jon Snow, you're kind of he's probably not going to die, but it's also he definitely died at the end of Season 5. So you don't know what's happening, and just, it was a beautiful episode, I think, and a satisfying end to Ramsay. So,
yes,
definitely my favorite moment in this series, but my favorite character by far is Tyrion. Anything he does is just immediately I'm hooked in. I think he's just done a fantastic job. Particularly Tyrion and Bronn together are just my favorite combination of people.
They're a great duo.
So whenever they're together, I'm always just looking forward to it, because Peter Dinklage is just so quick-witted and just delivers his lines so well, and just I think really embodies Tyrion, that I just love everything he's doing. So Adam,
well said.
Adam, what you got for me, buddy?
So what was the question? Characters, moments?
Yeah, characters and moments.
Let's see. For characters, I mean, it's a massive cast, so there are no wrong answers, really. Because everybody's great.
Unless it's Cersei, that's a wrong answer.
Well, here's my deal. I think Cersei, in the Lannisters as a whole, I think are some of the most interesting characters in the entire show. I mean, I wouldn't hate somebody for saying that Cersei is their favorite character just because of how interesting I think she's written. She's not my favorite in particular.
I mean, I might assume they're a bad person. If you look at Cersei, be yes, that's who I want.
I think there's a difference between saying that, hey, this is a person that I idolize and want to emulate, and saying, oh, I like that character because I think it's an interesting character, right?
You know what?
I like Walter White's character in Breaking Bad, but I don't want to be Walter White.
It's a great point.
Oh, you know for a fact that if the opportunity arose, you would be a drug kingpin. You know it, Adam. Don't lie to me.
You've caught me. No, but in terms of favorite character, I think Tywin Lannister is highly underappreciated.
I agree.
I love Charles Dance. I think he was wonderfully portrayed. Oberyn Martell is another character that I really enjoyed that I think is a little underrated. Lord Varys, the Spider.
Oh, I love Oberyn,
think is
but
extremely
he makes me
interesting.
sad, thinking about him.
Yeah, true. But I think I'm of a similar mind with Kevin, and I have to say Tyrion Lannister.
You bring up a great point about Tywin. I mean, Charles Dance played him perfectly. Just the way he interacted with his grandson, who was just this petulant ass of a king. And Charles Dance played Tywin to keep him in check and remind him that, this is a lot bigger than himself and his crossbow. And I think you bringing up Cersei is interesting because I think you can separate the characters from the performances because, I mean, Lena Headey's performance as Cersei is just second to none. I mean, 100%. She's phenomenal. She's phenomenal. And that's what's so great about this show, too. I mean, they hit every single casting choice that they made. There isn't a single weak performance on that show from beginning to end.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So, I mean, I think that's why most people can agree that Game of Thrones is probably one of, if not the best television show to have been made thus far.
Absolutely agree with that.
If you don't think it's the best, you can. I think it's fair that anybody would say it's probably a top 5 TV show.
Oh, it's easily in my top 5, and I've seen The Sopranos and The Wire and Breaking Bad and all the rest, and Game of Thrones absolutely belongs in that top 5 conversation.
So on our rundown, it says we're coming to our close, but we were gonna have a bonus segment last week when we were planning on having Dan, and we're gonna do that bonus segment right now.
Oh God!
So we are still in Hanukkah. It's like day 6? Day 6.
We are on day 6. Night 7 is tonight. Yes.
So it's day 6 of Hanukkah. So we are going to talk the best Adam Sandler movie.
Oh God!
So think about Adam Sandler movies.
I already have my answer ready.
Trash. All right, Dan, you got your answer ready. Hit me.
It's Happy Gilmore. It's not even close. It's the best Adam Sandler movie.
The easy answer.
The conversation starts and ends there. Yes, Billy Madison is great, and The Waterboy is great, but it starts and ends with Happy Gilmore. It's not even close.
Yeah, definitely Happy Gilmore would probably be my choice, but for the sake of diversity, I am a huge fan of The Longest Yard and what Adam Sandler did with that. I have noticed that his best movies, Adam Sandler's best movies, tend to be sports movies. So Happy Gilmore, The Waterboy, for me, The Longest Yard. And definitely, I think he's missed a couple times recently, but I still look forward to when Adam Sandler he's missed most of his movies have missed recently.
Yeah,
I think maybe the last good movie that I think Adam Sandler put out was like the first Grown Ups. I laughed a lot when I watched the first Grown Ups, but since then there hasn't been a whole lot. But I like The Longest Yard.
I think Funny People was a decent movie.
Which one? Oh, Funny People.
Funny People.
Adam, what do you got for the best Adam Sandler movie?
Again, this is a case where there is one objectively correct answer, and that is Happy Gilmore. But again, just to change things up, I think I'm gonna go with a somewhat underrated movie, 50 First Dates.
Ooh,
yeah.
Good choice.
No, that's a good one. No, that is a good one. I think another underrated one is 8 Crazy Nights. I think that one is a fun watch every now and then. But yeah, so that was the best Adam Sandler movie, which we all agree it's Happy Gilmore, but we can appreciate some of his other films that he's put out. So we're skipping video games for this one because Dan knows absolutely nothing about video games. But we've talked. It looks like we're up on like 45 minutes. So we'll start wrapping up. Dan, thank you so much for being on the show with us. It was a pleasure.
Oh, thank you for having me. Looking forward to doing it again, and maybe we can reconvene during or after Game of Thrones goes off the air.
Sounds like a plan. You hear that, Adam? That means we have to keep this going for at least 5 more months.
I think you guys are capable.
I think so. It's really just, do we have time? And we tend to make time. We usually do a good job of making time to film it up. So that's the end of our show. Adam, you got your shout out ready?
Yeah, Margot Robbie, if you're listening, big fans, love to have you on.
All right, so Margot Robbie this time. So that's Gal Gadot and Margot Robbie. We're trying to get onto the show. Dan, if you have connections, let us know.
I will do that.
But that's the end of the show. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next time.